Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to We Built an Empire. I'm your host, Kyle Wolff. Today's episode, I'm really excited. Gentlemen, I get to call my friend, top 5 real estate agent in the Southwest Colorado region, RLI Instructor of the Year 2020, Justin Osborn. Justin, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on today, Kyle.
Thank you for being on, man. You're actually the first real estate agent to be on the show that I get to work with kind of on a daily basis. So it's a real pleasure to have somebody on that I've got a personal relationship with and talk real estate shop and everything like that. So
yeah, this ought to be fun.
Yeah, it'll be a good time, man. I appreciate you coming on. So I wanted to just, in case somebody doesn't know you, why don't you give us, a 2-minute skinny, how'd you get into the industry, or what brought you to the region, or, take us back a little bit, and we'll come back to it and dive into other stuff that you talk about. So.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no problem. I grew up in Rockwall, Texas, east of Dallas. At the time, it was a pretty rural, small community. Definitely not now. But I loved it. I just could not stand the heat. And we grew up kind of coming up to Colorado and doing a ski vacation here and there, doing a camping trip here and there. And I just said, why in the world are we living in Texas when there's mountains so close? So I made it my goal to move up to the Rocky Mountains whenever I graduated high school. My parents were full support of that decision. And I looked at a lot of the smaller colleges. We didn't have a lot of money at all growing up. And so I was actually the first Osborn in my family to ever go to college.
Wow.
And so we just could not afford the big universities, out-of-state tuition. It strictly was not an option. So we started looking at smaller schools, and I narrowed it down to, at the time, what was called Western State University in Gunnison and Fort Lewis College in Durango. And I woke up one morning and Weather Channel is showing the coldest town in the United States, and it was Gunnison, Colorado at negative 14 degrees. And I said, I don't think I want to go to school there, go from one extreme heat to the opposite extreme coldness. So moved up to Durango, Colorado to attend Fort Lewis College in the late 90s. And I got my real estate license in 2002, and I did an internship with Coldwell Banker. And so that's what kind of sparked me into the industry, and here I am now, 20-something years later.
Nice. Well, that's a good story. So did you kind of always know real estate? I mean, I know a little bit of your past, but it's kind of odd on these shows, the version of a person you think it's such a micro sliver of somebody's life. But I know your mother does real estate in Texas. I'm not sure if she's still active, but did you always kind of know that real estate was the path, or was there that light switch that went off and said, like, this is where I need to be? Or
no, I didn't know. So yes, my mother is still very active in real estate. She works with Ebby Halliday Realtors there in North Texas. My father was a custom home builder, and that kind of all started once I was about middle school age. So we grew up honestly kind of real poor. Just single wide mobile home, back of a wrecking yard is where we lived. My dad worked on it was a foreign auto parts junkyard, and I just kind of grew up watching and hearing about him trade and barter. And let's say somebody needed an alternator or a panel for an old Toyota. He would try to say, all right, I need a front door, I need a window, I need some lumber. And he would barter and trade foreign auto parts for building supplies and stored it there on the wrecking yard. And I was too young to really understand what was going on at the time. But then he bought 10 acres, owner financing terms, and built his first home. And man, business just took off from there, where he built his first custom home. We lived in it. My mom got her real estate license. I was about middle school age, and she sold it, and then their business just took off from that. And I mean, after being in the industry, it takes a few years to kind of get up and rolling. So that success in their world didn't really happen until I was already out of the house in college.
Sure.
So, the way I grew up compared to the way my younger brothers grew up is two totally different stories. It's really funny.
What's the age difference between you guys?
The middle one, my middle brother Shane, we're 3 years apart.
Okay.
My youngest brother Tanner, we're 7 years apart.
Okay. So they got to see the kind of fruition of that come to life, right?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, definitely. They got to experience it. They lived it. It was later, you know, when I got out of college and kind of got to see the benefits that they experienced, and that was awesome. But yeah, what really got me into real estate was I was a junior in college, and I was refereeing high school and college soccer games, and we had a local crew here in Southwest Colorado that spent a lot of time traveling together. And one of the guys that really encouraged me to go get my license and to get into the business that I own a ton of my success to was John Mahoney. He was the managing broker at Caldwell Banker for a long time. And he encouraged me to go get licensed and welcomed me as an intern. My junior year of college, did an internship there at Caldwell Banker, and it just took off from there. You know, I remember being a junior in college and having my very first closing. Oh, it was a $30,000 double wide. Oh, wasn't even on any land, and got that first commission check and thought I was pretty hot stuff. And little did I know anything about setting money aside for taxes or any of that stuff as a 21-year-old college kid.
Oh gosh, that first deal is pretty amazing. You know, I'm as you know, I'm relatively new to the business. I've only been doing this for 2 years. Had some great success for whatever reason or another. Maybe somebody's looking over me. I don't know. But that first deal, it seemed like it was, God, it felt like 5 years in the making. And you're working and you're hustling. And that's like, it was a nothing land deal. And actually it was a listing that, you know, you and Grimwood had for years. And it was, everybody was so busy in 2022 or 2020 and 2021. It was like, you guys were like, if you want this, it's a crummy piece of land, but you know, just to get you something, you know, you could take it. No strings attached, no nothing. And I was like, oh, I need this so bad, you know. And it was right next to my in-laws, and just the market being what it was, I don't think it ever would have sold. But somebody saw it and they were like, oh my God, we can get 75 acres for, I don't know, it was probably 35 grand, 36. And that first closing check, you go, oh my gosh, okay, now we got to go to work. You know?
Exactly.
But, you know, that first one you get it, it's like, God, it just feels like it. Overnight, it's like, okay, it happened, okay, and then there's still so much to learn. You know, that deal was as smooth as it could be. The very next one was the most horrific deal I've had to date. You know, so just that's pretty amazing. So, so I wanted to talk to you about this because this was something that I wasn't aware of when I first started, and you've actually brought it to my attention, and I'll probably be joining because you do a lot of land transactions. You know, you do condos and homes and commercial listings and things like that, but you do a lot of land comparatively speaking to other agents in our area. And one thing that you had invited me to sit in as a guest was the RLI meeting here at the Durango chapter here a few months back, maybe 6 months ago. And that was such an interesting situation because it's a completely different mentality when you get just a bunch of land guys in one room. Mm-hmm. And we're talking, you know, these aren't $20,000, you know, quarter acre lots in a subdivision. You know, some of these ranches are 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 acres, mm-hmm. and you know, some of them are very expensive. And that was such an interesting kind of eye-opening event and I just sat like a cricket on the wall, just watching you guys do your thing. It's a completely different lingo. We're still talking, you know, exchanging goods and services and, you know, monetary value, but, I'm really curious as to how you got into land and then taking that to the next level and becoming an instructor with RLI. So can you kind of give us when you started out, did you kind of always do land? Was it just a niche that you had, or did you?
It was a passion I had.
Yeah.
It wasn't a niche that I had. I mean, I graduated with a degree in marketing. So, you know, I kind of had some really good education, some really good classes. We have phenomenal business professors at Fort Lewis College.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
Durango, I forget the exact saying, but I think it doesn't matter what industry or what profession you're in Durango, it's one of the most, you know, overqualified towns in America because people just want to live here.
Oh, yeah.
And they could be making money other places, but, you know, they choose a lifestyle here and take a pay cut for it. And I got to see the benefit of that at Fort Lewis College. And so when I came out of school, I had this marketing degree and I had this commission job. And I saw, at the time, there was probably, 150, 200 realtors. I mean, now we're, 470 realtors in Durango. It's kind of crazy, not counting all the surrounding counties. But at the time, there was still a lot, and they were all fighting for the same piece of the pie.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to sell kind of the homes in the Animas Valley, and everybody wanted to sell ranches, and everybody wanted to sell historic homes on 3rd Avenue in the district there. And it's like, this is kind of silly. Why is nobody targeting the more rural areas? And I got a passion for the country. I mean, kind of grew up in the country. My grandpa had a ranch where he ran cattle, and I'd spend my summers up there helping with cows. And so, I'm not a city slicker type guy. And so when I saw this opportunity to target kind of the rural areas, I capitalized on it. And the very first letter I ever wrote to absentee homeowners was way before GIS mapping and all that.
Yeah.
We literally went through county records one click at a time and figured out who all the absentee owners were that lived in Texas but owned real estate in La Plata County. And I wrote a letter to them, and it was titled "Dear Fellow Texan." So there was just this instant connection, and it was crazy how my business just took off so quickly as a result of that. And they're saying we don't know any realtors in Durango, and everybody knows 3 to 5, 7 realtors in Durango, but those absentee owners back then, everybody got snail mail still. Email was just kind of taken off, but there wasn't any Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, none of that stuff had existed back then. So there was an instant relation when I sent a letter to them that was titled "Dear Fellow Texan." I'm here to take care of you. I understand your lingo. You understand me. We've got the same roots, and that's really how I got started in selling rural properties in La Plata County. It was just having a family that I had to feed and figuring out where can I go where I'm not competing with everybody. And that was it.
Yeah. I mean, that's I in kind of preparation of this interview, but also just looking at you trying to diversify the way that I run a business, and I take a lot in part from a couple of different agents at our office, but trying to emulate some of the things that you've done, like with the land, and it takes an art to try, and I'm nowhere near good at it yet, but there's very little comps for a 100-acre parcel out in Red Mesa or, east of Bayfield, or, so it's like you have to go visit it. You've got to almost, tour the land, breathe it, see what it looks like. And there's a little bit of comps out there, there is that, but it's like, kind of watching you, and, you'll have a listing, and I go in and I'll kind of try and reverse engineer your listing. Like, how the hell did he get to this? And it's intriguing because it's just different, and even from an appraisal standpoint, they're calling like, how'd you get there? I'm like, well, this, and this. And I truly don't think the appraisers quite get it on land a lot of times. But it's to me, it's more fun dealing with a land deal. Granted, it's nice selling a house. If you sell $1 million home, it's like, that was real fun. That was awesome. That paycheck was real nice. But the land thing is just, it seems like it's a truly an art. And it's like something that I'm trying to kind of figure out, and I'm still not comfortable with it, but trying to work with you as much as I can, and then also kind of reverse engineer. I'm like, it's you're always constantly tweaking it. There's no just cookie cutter way to, and it could be a 30-acre parcel here and a 30-acre parcel here that's got a draw through it that sells for, $15,000, $20,000 difference. So it's like, it's interesting to see kind of control a lot of that rural land market.
It's certainly fun. I mean, it's very enjoyable. I'm obviously not the kind of person that wants to go sit behind a desk and stare at a computer all day. And, there's algorithms out there that make it, I don't know if easy is the right word, but they make it somewhat easy, relatively easy for determining current market value for a home, right? 1/4 acre lot, single family home subdivision. It's this square footage. Maybe you make an adjustment for it being on one side of the road versus the other that sees the sun more in the winter or whatnot. But with land, we don't have these algorithms. Yeah. And even if we did, it's hard to put a value on, well, that 20-inch rainbow might be worth $100,000 to the guy from Texas that hasn't caught one, who wants to take his grandson fishing, whereas somebody who grew up, in Southwest Colorado where they could go fish every weekend might be worth, a tenth of that price.
Sure.
So you deal with a lot of subjective kind of pricing opinions when you're dealing with land. What's the view worth? What are the trees worth? What's the water worth? Irrigation water. That's a huge thing that's hard to put a value on, based on the production that it'll have. And so it's fun, but it's definitely challenging. And I think it's intimidating for a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of agents, especially where we're at in Southwest Colorado, they don't really want to try to understand it because it's so different.
Mm-hmm.
You and you talk about Red Mesa. I mean, how many counties are there in the country where we can say, all right, if we go on this side of the county, we can show you land that's worth $600 to $800 an acre. In the same county, in the same zip code, we can drive, same school district, we can drive 30 minutes over to maybe the Animas Valley, and instead of being $600 to $800 an acre, we've got land that's worth $30,000 an acre.
Yeah.
If it's a small parcel, maybe it's $100,000 to $150,000 an acre. So I kind of always chuckle when you get that phone call from the buyer who says, "I'm looking to relocate in Durango. What's your average price per acre for land?"
Yeah.
Like, all right, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? Because the sagebrush, the pinyon, the juniper, so different than the high country, the aspens, the creeks, all that type of stuff. But it makes it fun, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we never have a day that looks like the other.
No,
Never a dull moment.
That is a good thing. You can, before this, I was an electrician for almost 17 years actually, and you do. In fact, you turn a light bulb the same way every time, and there's some nuances and it changes, but I will say that there is no single day, no single transaction that's ever the same. They may be similar and you learn from the past and move on, but that is why I think personally, just the style that I operate in within my brain, the constant movement with this industry, it's like, I'm never leaving it. It's just too fun. And granted, there's days where you're like, God, dog, that almost beat me to death. But then the next day it's like, we gotta win. And so,
yeah. And the more time, you spend with clients driving around, the more you understand what they put value on. It's, again, kind of easy to punch numbers in a computer and see what it spits out as far as, all right, here's what a home in Skyridge might be worth that has a mountain view because there's so many of them that sell up there.
yeah.
But when you're riding around in the pickup truck and the buyer is saying, "Oh, I'll get that. Let me get the gate." And you're like, "Okay, great." And then they get out there and it's a wire fence with cedar post and they're struggling for 2 minutes trying to even get onto the property. You learn real quick that, oh man, we just put a negative in that buyer's mind before we even got on the property.
Yep.
So wire gates, no more. I mean, farm properties, ranch properties, the owners have been dealing with it for
Sure.
50 years. It doesn't bother them. But for the buyer that's trying to get out of the city because, they want to have some recreation for their family and they've got to go mess with a wire gate, that's the kind of stuff that I've kind of taken note of. All right, I need to spend as much time actually riding around with buyers as I can.
Yeah.
So I understand what they like, what they don't like.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned, riding around with clients. So when I first started, like I say, I've only been doing this 2 years, so it was kind of in the heat of COVID, and it was like no office, no clients in cars, meet out there with a mask or whatever the scenario was. And so it was probably it was this summer, so maybe roughly 6 months ago, got a call, and these folks were coming in from, I think, Alabama, Mississippi. I think they had called you. It was a roundabout way. They called me, but it was interesting because during all the time that I've been working, nobody wanted to ride with you still, and so they called me. We'll be there tomorrow. Pick us up at the hotel, and I was like, pick you up? What do you mean? So as I got there, and really really good people, and we got in, and they wanted a 500 plus acre ranch. So, and they wanted to spend X. I said, okay, well, the only place we're going to find that is near the Utah border. And I was like, so we put that weekend, we put close to 800 miles, and so, but here's the deal, though, and not every land is created equal. Not every 3-acre parcel is created equal. So we went all the way to the Utah border, and then that night, they got on Zillow, and they found it. Man, this place down near, where Chromo's at? I was like, I sure do. And this looks beautiful. I was like, it is absolutely beautiful. It's more money because you got some views, and there's some problems with that area, but there's also some good things about there. Do you guys want to go see it? Oh, yes, sir, we sure would. So that morning, I went out there to show one of your ranches you had on Red Mesa. Went all the way to the other side of the county. So we're going down there 2 sides of the state in the same weekend. But you bring up a really good point because, we had so many similarities. I got to talking to those guys about, my mom and dad and my children. And it was, I'm from northern Louisiana. They're from, Alabama or Mississippi. I can't quite remember. But, it is, you do kind of build a different kind of relationship when you got that person in the car with you. You start to really get to know them and the things that they really don't like. And it's funny that you mentioned that same gate because we went up on a couple of those ranches and he was like, nope, I'm 72 years old. I don't got time for that. I said, well, we could write it in. I mean, you want that? Heck, we could have them put a gated panel. We'll be fine. Nope. Don't want to maintain it. Okay. Yeah. All right. So it's, but that's such a good point is really, truly getting people back into the car, because if they would have, I don't even ask people anymore, it's almost like how I grew up in the industry, how I'm growing up. Didn't start it that way. It was all, so it's like when people want to go with me, now I'm starting to go, would you guys want to ride with me? Oh, it's okay. We'll just meet you there. But I'm trying to put that back out there because it gives you a different understanding of the client for sure.
Sure. Well, and as much as social media and certain websites want to try to, sell you leads and do everything like this, kind of with your thumbs on your phone behind a screen, this is very much still a relationship business. And I think that as long as you're selling rural properties, land, farms, ranches, riverfront properties, it's always going to be relationship business. Now, I do a lot of commercial and there's relationships there, but it's not the same. That's strictly based on investment and cap rates and, returns. And so the relationships certainly help generate business, but it's not an emotional decision. When you've got somebody and they're sitting on the edge of a meadow and it's September and it's 8 o'clock and the sun's about to set and a 6x6 bull pushes a herd out and starts bugling, that is an emotional purchase right there, man. And it's awesome.
It is amazing. It really is, so that is I'm taking mental notes about things of constantly kind of trying to change the way that I interact, and it's you telling kind of these stories, and it's more true, I think, than some people really think it is, So I'm hearing this and I'm going in my mind, I'm already going, okay, well, we got to start to, the next time we have a client, they want to look at land, let's make it more of not an event, but like, let's make sure that it does have that visceral feel about it.
Sure.
We're not just driving to the gate and you guys want to get out. No, let's, and so,
yeah, as old Jim Watkins would say, you got to slow down to go fast, man. This is such a fast-paced world and a fast-paced industry, but we've got to slow down in order to go fast. And when you slow down and you actually kind of take some time to walk some property, or maybe you got a side-by-side and you're driving the property, or maybe you've got horses and you're riding the property, sure, it takes longer. But man, you can do that on 2 properties and they're going to buy one.
Sure.
Versus if you go drive 6 and don't get out of your truck, they may not buy one. So I've always loved hearing him say that. You asked about RLI and how I got into it. So I'll circle back to that. I'm going to say about 12, maybe 13 years ago, there was a big auction over in Dolores and Mancos, and several big ranches were being auctioned off. And the auction company was out of Amarillo, Texas, and it was called Clift Land Brokerages. And George Clift walked into my office one day at Caldwell Banker and said, man, I'm looking at stats and looking at what you're doing, and why are you not part of this organization called Realtors Land Institute, RLI? I said, man, I don't even know what you're talking about. I've never even heard of this organization. And that man, kind of like John Mahoney, he took me in under his wing, and he was just a fabulous mentor. In Durango, I didn't have a mentor for selling rural properties. There was certainly some great mentors that were part of my life, but I didn't have that real estate broker I could look at and say, I want to do what he's doing, or I want to do what she's doing. So I just kind of was always winging it on my own. And then, George came in and ran this auction, and I'd never been to an auction before for real estate. And he said, you need to come see what we do. So we went over there to Dolores and went to that auction, and man, I learned so much that day on just buyer demand and what they want, and the package that he put together on the marketing to sell those ranches at the auction. And we were friends for a long time, man. And unfortunately, George Cliff passed away just a few weeks ago. And it hit me hard, to be honest with you, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be the success I am today. And it hit me pretty hard.
I'm sorry to hear that. That's that's always kind of rough. Going to that event that you kind of invited me to, just as one of your guests, to just see it. It is interesting because and this is no shade on anybody, but I think that not all real estate agents are created equal. They're not all cut from the same cloth. Sometimes that sort of shows itself in marketing. And the one thing I will say is that most of those, and maybe because it's a harder sell, but a lot of those big ranch deals, it's like the same amount of marketing that some of these agents do across an entire year for one ranch. It's like I've seen some of these ranches where they've got so many ins and outs, where they've got a web page, they've got drone footage from this 600-acre tract over to here. They're showing all kinds of things. And it is crazy the amount of work that has to go into a large-scale ranch like that. But I took away from it, at least within that chapter meeting you held here, it wasn't just like the big dollar, the big money ranches that people were putting all this effort into. It was like 100-acre farms, some place up in, where in Montrose or something like that. It was the same amount of effort that these folks were putting into the marketing package and the budget. And so I've seen some of the things that you've done, especially like recently, and it's to me, I think it's interesting to watch it kind of from afar, because you do market differently than a lot of people, like on your personal listings. But you've recently brought in, a lot of aerial footage, like long scale video, kind of more a talking format, kind of giving a different depth and breadth to the marketing that you're pushing for. And it may not be the case for every house, but some of these other rural properties. So kind of what drove you to sort of, is it the industry that's changing that you're kind of just trying to, I guess, expand on your marketing, or, what's kind of driving that? I was curious.
Well, honestly, I'm trying to get ahead of what I think is a downturn that's coming. I hope I'm wrong, but I've been doing this 21 years, 22 years. I've seen a couple cycles, and I mean, the past 24 months during COVID, it was pretty easy for anybody to get in the industry and take a listing and get 8 offers and say, look what I did.
Yeah, I was so good.
I'm so good. Look what I did. It's like, well, no, the market did that. COVID did that. Crazy towns putting restrictions on people that they can't leave their house and their kids can't go play in a community park did that. You didn't do that. Your timing was lucky. So it was pretty easy to sell anything the past couple of years, and we didn't have to do a whole lot of marketing. I mean, me, I certainly didn't stop using professionals to do my marketing, and that's something I take a lot of pride in. Is you're not gonna see me in a picture, or a mirror holding my iPhone like we've seen recently in some listings, and you're not gonna see my truck mirror in any of my photos for my listings, because I don't sit in my truck and take pictures, where you're going to see the rear view mirror. So I've certainly have not stopped using professionals even during the times where everything was selling. But I think in answer to your question, what's happening is I'm trying to make sure that all the marketing is in place and it's extremely professional because it's about to start getting harder to sell these listings. You know, pre-COVID, before you were in the business, it was 6-7 months to sell most rural listings. That was with a house on it. Land was maybe 365 days, you know, maybe a year and a half. And it was just the norm. You know, it's what we told our clients. Yeah, we're going to do a 2-year listing agreement because it could take me 2 years to sell this. And majority of the clients understood that. Now we're seeing price reductions after 20 days on the market, and realtors are freaking out and sellers are freaking out saying, oh my gosh, we got to drop the price. Property hadn't sold. Yeah. It's like, hold on, just time out, slow down. How soon we quickly forget. You know, I think we're going to get back to what I call a balanced market. You know, there's certainly going to be rural areas that, you know, get hit a little harder. But I think areas like where you and I are here in Southwest Colorado, we're pretty fortunate to be here. And there's always going to be more people that want to be here than we have inventory for. Sure. So if we get back to 5 to 6 months to sell something, that's a balanced market in my mind. Yeah. You know, sellers not getting the best in the deal, buyers not getting the best of the deal, kind of meeting in the middle, negotiate a little bit. Nobody feels like they got taken advantage of. We don't have buyer remorse like we're starting to see. But that's a balanced market. And so I think that's why, you know, you probably see a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, even on these smaller deals. I mean, we had a $200,000 deal just recently where it was 35 acres. It was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Did like you said, drone aerial, did a commercial on that with a voiceover, didn't just have music, actually had, you know, the voiceover talking about the property and the area. And that was just a few weeks ago here in, you know, late fall, early winter of 2022. The market had already slowed down. Rates were crazy high. And that property sold after 10 days on the market. So I've just got to believe that doing marketing like that, it's expensive. It's not cheap. Sure. But doing that kind of stuff helps sell properties when other ones are sitting on the market. Because I try to make sure, as you said, you know, buyer coming in from Mississippi, Alabama, they're doing their research online. I want to make sure that when they're doing that research and they're looking at 5 or 10 or 20 properties and comparing them, that they understand my listings better than anybody's. They understand where it is, what the elevation is, what the topography's like. They don't get here with a bunch of unknowns. Sure. And in my experience, the properties that the buyer understands the most are most often the ones they buy. Yeah. No, that's a really good concept. Yeah, I mean, they are doing, you know, these buyers out of town and even local. I mean, some of, you know, my buyers I'm actively working with, been working with for a year. They're calling me and going, "Did you see that new property?" Like, well, I got a notification. I haven't opened up the email. It's somewhere in there, and we want to see it tonight at 5:00. Okay, all right, we can try and make that happen. But they are doing most of their research themselves online, and so I think you are correct in what you're doing there, because it's interesting to see the difference. And somebody that's going to stick in somebody's mind. You know, they click this video because you can import it into Zillow, and all of a sudden it's not just a drone still photo. It's a video, and all of a sudden it's like, well, bam, okay, now that's top of mind. They might see 10 other properties, but they're going to remember Justin's listing out there that was the neighbor's property. So, yeah, and that's the goal. Like I said, it's not cheap. I mean, we had a ranch in Pagosa Springs where we had a $30,000 marketing budget. I mean, you start forking out cash every single month for paying for these properties to be on websites that they're on, and the days on market just keeps ticking up and ticking up and ticking up, and you're saying, man, I hope this thing sells so I can get reimbursed. And, you know, back then, not all of them did. Yeah. You know, we might be getting back to that point if people don't, you know, market their properties right and price them appropriately. Sure. But yeah, it's a big dent in the pocketbook, and diesel finally just dipped under $5 a gallon yesterday, but you're filling up the truck, like you said, 800 miles in 3 days, and you're not leaving 2 counties. Yeah. And you're filling up your truck with diesel at $5 a gallon. It adds up quickly, the expenses in this industry that I think the general public probably doesn't really understand. Yeah, it's hard to kind of put that. I mean, I think
if you've got the marketing showcase like that, I would think that most sellers, most buyers could see that and go, he's got expense in this. But there's definitely that common thread, and it's not every buyer by any means, it's not every seller, but there's a lot of folks that go, oh, boy, real estate agents, they're a dime a dozen, they're way overpaid. And so, it's like, it is hard, to take an average house, you're probably $1,200, $1,500 if you're doing a proper marketing package before you ever even go to market.
Oh yeah, you'll do that the first 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. And so people go, why would you make this money? Well, I basically just gifted that person $1,500 and I'm trying in hopes to sell the home, and so it's kind of interesting. So you had sold me something a while ago, and it was kind of during the first, 2008, 2009 market crash. And it was real interesting because I don't have any history, but I do believe that we will start to see the number or quantity of agents start to wane. If there's no inventory and interest rates stay high and it's harder to get work, and if we have 500 real estate agents, there's not enough for 500 people to make adequate living. So I think that we will see real estate agent quantities and numbers start to fall, but maybe not close to where you saw it in 2008, 2009. But you had told me a while ago that was when you really started to see your business from a transactional volume increase when most were decreasing because of inventory. So I've always been curious, and I wanted a way to kind of really dive into this, but like, what was the thing during that time frame that took your business to like, let's just say the next level? Like what, because people were falling by the wayside. And granted, you had a couple of years. You probably had to have what, maybe 8, 9, 10 years? Yeah,
I was probably, minimum 7, 8 years in the business when that turned.
But at that point, you were doing nowhere near the business you do today, right? So what was it like that just, especially in that time frame, that just took you to what you said the other day, like the next level? Like you were like, that was when my business actually turned into what it was going to eventually become today. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, man. Quite simple. If mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. Joking aside, I had a family to feed. It wasn't an option for me to say, oh, my business is down and blame it on the market. And no judgment to anybody that was struggling during that time, because there were a lot of us that were struggling. But it doesn't matter what the market is. If it's down or up, there's still people that need a roof over their head. And it definitely got harder in order to do business. It was challenging. It was buyers really trying to take advantage of sellers. Mm-hmm. And where we live, a lot of the properties we're selling are a very small part of the seller's net worth. And so you get a buyer who sees something on some news channel or hears it on some radio station, and here's the tactics to get a good deal. And they're coming from maybe Houston or LA or Phoenix. That may work. But then they get here to Durango, Colorado, and they try to negotiate with a seller who's, the property's been in their family for 3 generations. And they're saying, take a hike, man.
Yeah.
I don't need to sell in order to make the next step in life like you think I do. So it was hard. But that's really the bottom line, is there were still buyers and sellers to be had. And I just got in the middle of it. I started traveling farther. I really started just trying to be open-minded on what it would take to get a deal done. But that was it. It wasn't just kind of sitting around, twiddling your thumbs like this, waiting for the business to come to you. It was really out trying to beat the streets. And if I found a good deal that I said, man, I wish I had the money to buy that, I'd flag it. And I had like kind of 6 or 8 of these building up saying, man, if I had the money, I would buy this. And then I started meeting investors that would call or that would come in, and they'd say, well, what's a good deal right now? I'm like, well, let me show you. I've been eyeing these 4, 5, 6 properties, and they're still out there, and I think they're no-brainer decisions. And so that's really how it happened, is just kind of putting the hammer down, saying, I've got a family to feed. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that I'm not one of these, 30, 40% realtors getting out of the business because times are bad. I'm going to make sure that, my business continues to exceed.
That's pretty awesome. One thing you said when I first started, and going back to your comment just a second ago, is, and I think I was sitting in the Bayfield office probably doing nothing, and barely knew you at the time, but you were like, you got to be willing to drive, like cut and dry. Like, be willing to drive, and you'll be successful. That's the thing. Like, so if you got to go up and over the hill because you need to pay rent that week, like sometimes it's okay to refer things out, but it's like if you're that person that's willing to go from Pagosa to Dove Creek, then those people are going to remember you. I took that to heart 100%, and I will drive. A lot of people are like, I ain't going to Quartet. I'm going. When do we need to be there? That's my questions. Like, Dove Creek, sure, let's go. I like that place. So what other thing you were talking about? That was pretty amazing. Man, I lost my train of thought, Justin. I apologize. I'll think of it. But so if I'm a brand new agent in today's market, and I'm not far removed from being a brand new agent, what advice do you have for them? Maybe in coming into the market that you think is we're getting ready to be living and breathing, because there's always going to be people out there that want to do this. Mm-hmm. What's your advice to that kid, that young person, or hell, even somebody looking for a career change, to actually have a chance to maybe make a career doing real estate?
Be in it for the long haul. Whether it's a new agent or a new investor, I tell them, like, kind of the days of fix and flips, mm-hmm. maybe they'll come back, but they're over right now. You're going to make your most money in this business as an investor or as a realtor if you can kind of look for the long haul. If you're buying a home and you're going to hold it for 7 to 10 years, you're likely going to make money out of it. There's always anomalies in certain pockets of the country, but historically, if you look at what's happened in the real estate market, it's been one of the best investments most Americans have ever made. And so I tell new brokers that, like, you've got to be in it for the long haul. You're going to spend the first kind of 3 or 4 years drumming up your business, creating your platforms, selling yourself to people a lot more than you're selling your properties, because people have to trust you.
Yeah.
If somebody's coming in here, and average home in downtown Durango now is what, $750,000? Somebody's spending $750,000. It's going to be their likely biggest investment they've ever made if they're going to come in and buy a home like that. And they've got to trust you. And so many agents come in thinking they need to sell a product. They need to sell a platform. But if you can sell yourself and just connect with people, like honestly connect with people and learn about what they enjoy. Do they mountain bike on the weekends, or do they go, backcountry, like skiing on the weekends in the winter? What is it that they do? Do they sit at home and watch the Golf Channel?
Yeah.
Everybody's different, but I think kind of all businesses, not just real estate, I think we've kind of gotten away with technology allowing us to lose that connection.
Sure.
With our clients. And man, if you can connect with people and they actually trust you, you're going to do a lot of business in this industry. But you can't connect with people if you're sitting behind your screen all day.
Yeah.
And that's what I think, honestly, it's probably maybe it's the fault of some of the managing brokers that are, feeding these leads and these websites and these clicks and all this stuff to these new brokers instead of encouraging them to,
get out there and beat feet.
Yeah, go get involved in something that you really enjoy. You don't want to go join Trout Unlimited if you're not a fisherman. I would never join a quilting club or something I just learned existed, goat yoga.
Goat yoga.
Oh, there's a goat yoga club, man, where you can go lay on a barn and let these baby goats walk all over your back.
Wow.
It cracks me up. But hey, there may be a realtor that can capitalize from doing a lot of business in that.
That goat yoga circuit.
Just not me, man.
One of the last things I don't want to take too much of your time today, and I appreciate you being here, but one of the things that I was thinking about a few minutes ago was coming into this market. We've talked about it briefly, and a lot of times you will have people that want to buy land. It may only be a couple acres. It could be 10 or 100 acres. And lending is hard on it. There's a few institutes here locally that historically have been great on lending, and they're still good on it. But we're seeing an increase for the required down payment, an increase for what the interest rate is, obviously. It's a riskier purchase, a riskier lend for a bank to make. And one of the things that I've always thought was really great with talking with you is it's like, how can we be creative to get this deal done? And I've got a couple other industry friends that are investors that they spark the idea to me of like, okay, let's talk to this buyer or seller about, seller carry, or let's talk about, can we get private finance? What can we do? And it's like, you don't see a lot of people, at least it's not that we don't see a lot of people, but you see a lot of people, their only option is to go to the bank, or that agent may say, okay. And if that falls through or doesn't work, it's like, well, darn it. We were close, guys. We just need to wait and look at the wrong price. It's like, well, hang on a second, And I saw you kind of do a couple of deals when I first started. It was like, this was a seller carry deal, or, kind of got these things done. And it was like, boom, light bulb. And it's like, okay, you can go to the bank first, but as a sideline for these buyers, I'm already talking to the, hey, can we do a seller carry? Hey, can we do creative financing? What can we do to get this deal done? And so when did that come in? Because a lot of people, I've been to a couple of investor meetings here. People are not aware of seller carry. People are scared to death to ask people that they know that may have money if they would be willing to, park $100,000 and do private financing or private lending. And so when did that kind of come into your purview of like, this is actually a way to get things done. Let's get the deal done first and foremost. And so when did that kind of come into your operating?
It was probably in the downturn. I'm one of those guys that doesn't really accept no as an answer. If there's somebody that wants to buy something and there's somebody that wants to sell something, I feel like that if there's a way we can put them together, that we've got a fiduciary duty to try every angle we can to do it. And so I think it was probably in the downturn, when banks were tight, you couldn't get loans, you had to have 800 plus credit scores to get a decent interest rate. And going back to, I had a family to feed, it's like, all right, there's got to be a way I can get this deal done. And at the time, in our real estate contract, our Colorado real estate contract, we actually had a financing paragraph, similar like we do now for conventional financing. We had, I'm going to say, probably 8 to 10 sentences on owner carry terms. And most people would just check the box to delete that out of the contract. But I was just sitting there reading the contract one day like, man, what exactly is this? I never done it. I know my parents had done it in the past to buy properties, but I didn't really understand what owner financing meant. And so I started actually reading the contract. I'm like, wait a minute. Did some investigating, learned that you couldn't do it if you had a note on the property. That was called a wrap at the time, and that's not allowed. So if the owner didn't own their property outright, if they still had a lien on it with their banks, the promissory note, had language in there that would not allow them to do that, and rightly so. But that's really what it was. It's like, all right, let's start getting creative. And if I've got a seller who wants to sell and a buyer that wants to buy, there's got to be a way to put them together. And especially right now, who's lost 20% or more on their stock portfolios the past year?
Not me. I parked it.
I'm raising my hand. Yeah, it's just taking a bath. And so a lot of my clients, they're losing 10% or more, 20%, like I'm saying. And you're giving them an option to say, hey, not only can I get you, 20% right now. So if we're selling a $200,000 property, we got $40,000, coming at closing. Then we're going to turn around and put, maybe it's another $1,000 or $1,200 a month in your pocket based on how long you amortize it. But we're not going to have that whole amortization schedule take place for 20 years like we do on land. We're going to have a balloon coming your way in 3 to 5 years where the buyer refinances and pays you off. Oh, and by the way, we're going to give you 8 to 10% return. And they're saying, what?
Yeah.
My financial advisor can't even give me an 8 to 10% return right now.
Yeah.
And so it's an education process. And so, going back to one of the questions you asked earlier, what do we tell the newer agents? I think it's get educated.
Sure.
This is not a let's put the square peg in the square hole industry. It's how do you put the round peg in the square hole that's, from them going into an octagon.
Yeah.
And the more tools you can have in your toolbox to really get deals done, the better you're going to represent your clients, the more they're going to spread your name, and the more business you're going to do. But it takes being open-minded and trying to figure out, all right, what can we do here? What's legal? What's ethical? Oh, great. We can do all this and everything is still fine with the real estate commission and my seller's happy. Great. Let's do it.
Yeah. What's the future hold for Justin Osborn? You've been doing this for a while. I mean, are you what's the next 5 years look like for you? I know you still got some little younger children, but not too terribly young. So
depends on the time of season. Yeah. I mean, we're fortunate to live in 4 seasons. I mean, I'm jetting out of here and we're going skiing tomorrow. I mean, hopefully it's more skiing. Hopefully it's more hunting. Hopefully it's more quality time with the wife. It's a cutthroat industry, man, and it's kind of silly that you're about to go through this. Hopefully you're smarter about it than I was, but your career starts taking off and your kids are 8 and 11 or 10 and 12. Mine are 13 and 15 right now. And you're like, wait a minute. Why is it that even not real estate, any industry, most of us dads kind of have our threshold and peak careers when our kids are middle school age. Mm-hmm. And then they get out of the house and we start slowing down and you're like, dude, this is so messed up. This is so backwards. Why does it have to be this way? And so hopefully you do a better job as a father than I did, man, because it was late nights, it was working on weekends. But I think that's probably what's next is, all right, I've kind of gotten to that point. Maybe it was a little later than we would have liked, but my kids are 13, they're 15. Don't miss a soccer game if I'm in town. Don't miss a volleyball game if I'm in town. If I'm here, it's a priority on the calendar. Where if I have a client, before that would call and say, hey, can you show me this property, tomorrow at 3 p.m. and my son had a soccer game, dang, I need that commission check.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll be there. Whereas now it's you know what? I can't be there at 3, but I can meet you there at noon. Well, I'd have to take off work. Well, yeah, I understand this is my availability, and they find a way to do it.
Sure.
But I think that's it, man. Next 5 years, I'm really enjoying the teaching gig. I made a lot of mistakes, growing up in this business, and I like trying to teach people what not to do. Learn from the mistakes I made so that you don't have to.
Yeah.
But
I've come to you with a couple of those, Justin, I'm about to screw this up. What am I doing? And you're like, well, all right, thank you. You saved my ass.
That's it, man. And it's having the humility to kind of realize that none of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. How do you fix them when you do it? And how do you try to prevent them from happening as much as possible?
Yeah. Well, I owe you a huge debt of gratitude. That's for darn sure. And I appreciate you, as busy as you are, you may not answer the phone call right that second, but you'll call me back. Always. Text message response immediately, call you right back, or you pick up. And so I appreciate you. I owe you a lot. And, I'm glad I do get to call you a friend. And I thank you for coming on this podcast. And hopefully, if somebody's got some questions about jumping into this crazy wild industry, maybe they reach out to you. And do you want to plug anything as far as a website or anything like that, where if somebody's got some questions for you, they can reach out to you?
Yeah, wellsgroupdurango.com. That's where they can find me. They can find you. They can find all of us.
Yeah.
Full-time realtors here in Southwest Colorado that work for the Wells Group. And
that's all good. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Justin.
All right, buddy.
Have you ever felt? Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.